And welcome to episode 43 of the Brewed Sages, Stormbound players with a head for the game. I am Freeloader, and with me, as always, are Subaiku and Thomas. Subaiku, how's it going tonight?
Fantastic.
And Thomas, how's it going?
Pretty all right.
I just love that answer.
It's kind
almost
of my
like
go-to
it's
anymore because I mean that's pretty much how it's going. It's like, it's it's
it's
all right.
whelming. It's whelming. Not
Exactly.
over, not under, just whelming. Well, speaking of whelming, we are the Brewed Sages, easily the second best Stormbound related podcast in production. And as a reminder, you can always follow us at Brewed Sages on Twitter. Or for all of you who think the original or double stuffed are the only real kinds of Oreos, our email address is thebrewedsages@gmail.com. Uh, Guys, it's the middle of the month. It's been several weeks since we splurged for the anniversary event. So hopefully, for at least a few of us, our libraries are feeling new and fresh and different. On top of that, we have some new cards. There's a whole bunch to talk about here. What do we think? How's the meta shaking out for the October 2021 season? And I'll start with Subaiku.
Yeah, I've got to say, it seems pretty healthy. Definitely a lot more winter than I remember seeing in the past. But despite all the complaints on Reddit about chill beards, I don't think it's that oppressive. Maybe that's just me because I'm trying to find decks that are good into it. A lot to Shadowfen. I think that's been a real key for me there. So that puts them on their back foot. They're not playing chill beards as offensively. I've certainly still died to it. Don't get me wrong, but a lot less than I expect otherwise. But it's definitely not only winter that I'm seeing. I'm still seeing a real healthy amount of swarm, and to a little bit of a lesser degree, Ironclad and Shadowfen. Overall, it feels pretty healthy. It feels like everything is pretty powerful. I really gotta say, I don't have any complaints about it right now. It feels pretty well balanced.
So, Thomas, Subaiku says he's not seeing a lot of offensive Chillbeard play, but my understanding from reading through Reddit is that all Chillbeard play is offensive. How's your experience been?
I mean, yeah, Chillbeard's just it is definitely way too offensive. But no, I think I agree with that. It's actually not as bad as I was originally screaming that it was when I first saw what the card was supposed to be doing. I'm looking at the top 20 right now on the leaderboard, and I've only played 5 of them this month now, and within the past couple days, and 4 of the 5 that I played have been Ironclad, and then
Ooh,
the one in first place, or at least as of the last time I looked, they were playing Swarm,
that's
and that,
ultrasonic, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
From my understanding, he did just switch over from Winter though, so he's kind
Okay.
of playing the extreme heavy hitter and then the other extreme heavy hitter with some of the other big cards that Swarm has. So I'm that's definitely not representative. The fact that I just said that 80% of what I've played against in the top 20 is Ironclad, and then the last 20% is Swarm, is definitely not what I feel like I've been playing. I would say that the most prevalent would be tied between Ironclad and Winter, and then Swarm coming up in third place. And it's like maybe 1 out of 10 games is Shadowfen.
I do agree with you that Shadowfen does seem to be falling behind, which surprises me because it does feel really good into Winter and Swarm, which I feel like I would say I'm probably seeing about 3 Winter, 2 Swarm, and then 1 Ironclad and 1 Shadowfen. Maybe even less Shadowfen than that. So I don't know. It surprises me. It feels like Shadowfen is real strong into Winter and Swarm, and those are the 2 most prevalent factions for sure.
Yep, I completely agree with that. I just switched over to Shadowfen Calaxy tonight, and I've been kind of steamrolling a lot of these Winter Pact players, which I'm surprised with because generally they're the best at going over the top. But I guess Calaxy is just a little bit better at that.
Galaxy's so much value.
And she clogs up the board so well. It makes it hard for them to get, land those Siren or Chillbeard's finishers that they're trying to.
So are
Yep.
a lot of these winter decks running both? Or are they choosing, their poison between Chillbeards and Siren?
Well, some of them like to run Ulf, Winter, or Ulf, Siren, and Chillbeards.
All
Just that
nines?
was my last opponent. Just played all three of them.
Oh, that's a
That's
heavy deck.
greedy.
I think the game finally ended at 26 mana, and I have to say, Calaxy did get it for me.
She
So
carried.
just wave after wave after wave, finally got it, and I was at like 9 health. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I've been seeing mostly Chillbeards or Chillbeards and Ulf. Those seem to be the two most prevalent, I would say. But I'm also still seeing a lot of like underground springs and freeze stuff. I've been working my way up through the Heroes League, so down in the hundreds and 200s. Maybe people are experimenting a little bit more, haven't optimized the way that the top 20 has.
Yep. So, fun fact for you before we kind of move on from that, when you just had mentioned that, yeah, you are starting to see a little bit more Ulf. The reason, honestly, is because based on memory, last fall when we had the horrible Ironclad reign with booming professors and just the Ironclad chip deck, the counterplay was to be playing Winter with Ulf because the base healing that you were getting from him, they just couldn't deal enough damage. And so, with this last month of Heroes League and Ozone Hysteria deck doing some great plays, now a lot of people are playing these Ironclad chip decks. Just played against a Booming Professor's deck in Heroes League just the other day. And so now Ulf is starting to get some real play time to try and counteract these chippy Ironclad decks.
That starts to make sense. So we're seeing a little bit of an RPS, rock paper scissors, uh, meta game going on where all of those decks are in fact rather viable, but based on which one the majority of players are choosing to play, one of the three becomes an optimal choice. So the
Hmm.
Ulf tucks in when you start to see more chip. That makes a lot of sense. I do recall, this is a while ago, when pre Chestnuts nerf, that my Chestnuts deck was quite powerful until I ran into an Ulf deck, and then it just always seemed like I couldn't quite get there.
Yep, that was the time period that I was talking about.
Yeah, those
Last
were
summer,
sad
last
times.
fall.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I remember. I have been searching for a control deck this month. I have not made the Heroes League yet. I'm in Diamond, but I've done a stream already. I'm probably going to do another one, and I'm really I've kind of fallen in love recently, guys, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's me and an alderman. We get along really well. He's out and about. You might even say he's trekking. But one way or another, it was not love at first sight. I saw him there a lot before I thought I'd give him a try. But now that we've finally given it a go, man, I have to tell you, there is something super filthy about a mana turn 7, drop a trekking alderman into a triple activated witches. It's gross. It is so disgusting. Like, and it happened once, and after it happened that first time, it was just it all clicked. Until I ran into David G, who showed me the ways of Ironclad with trekking aldermen and destructobots. And let me tell you, mana turn 5 is earlier than mana turn 7.
Yeah, that's a clever little combo there. Trekking Alderman is good in the early game.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, it's got good stats. The effect is really useful. It does seem to fall off for me. The games where I've played against it, I haven't really experimented with it. But when I played against it, it tends to fall off kind of later in the game as 5 damage becomes a little less relevant and the lack of movement becomes a little less relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But
You,
yeah,
you mean like when they play Bragda?
well, it does not really respond well to Claxy, I have to
No,
admit.
it does not.
um, yeah, it's perfectly good. I think it's well balanced now. It strongly falls off late. Like that's a good card.
Yeah. Uh, so my experience on the ladder though has been predominantly winter. It's the Diamond League seems to be a lot, or at least it was. This was about a week ago now. But it was predominantly winter with a dusting, we'll say, of Ironclad. So where have all the Shadowfen players gone? Well, I guess the question to that is, Subaiku, what are you playing right now?
I've been poking around a little bit between Winter and Shadowfen, but I have been playing mostly Shadowfen, I have to admit. Uh, Started off the month with a little bit of a rushier version. My old Cordia Rush deck. Played a little bit of a lighter chunk beam version that I stole
Hmm.
from Arthas. And then I've also settled on this kind of like rushy build with Cordia. And then it's like, you know what? I don't need that toxic sacrifice for defense. I'm just gonna put Claxy over the top.
I'm sorry, what?
So now it's more of a mid range deck. It does not struggle to get early damage down, and then Claxy's there as a backup option.
You took out Toxac and you put in Claxy.
Yes, I would like to point out I have a long standing maxim that defense is for suckers. You don't need
Need
to
that as like a
defend,
bumper sticker.
right?
He actually does. It's a beat up old Volkswagen minivan with defenses for suckers on the back of it.
Right. Just that and see the lethal, be the lethal.
That's right.
Again. Um, yeah, it's just toxic sacrifice is fine, but now that I have a lot more of my collection at level 5 after the anniversary, I don't really need it to turn the board around. I
Mhm.
can kind of play defense and compete in the early game. I have Toad and Witches for pretty good defensive options there. And then I can just apply pressure with Cordia if I need to. It's all coming together pretty well, actually, I have to say. So it does well against Winter. It does well against Swarm. Like I said, those are the two that I'm really trying to shore up my win rate against, because those are the two that I'm seeing the most of.
Huh. All right. And Thomas, what are you playing?
A little bit of everything. Mostly mid-rangey aggro this month, but every faction about equally. I think I've done the least amount of Swarm this month. Um, but yeah, otherwise I'd say just somewhat mid-rangey and trying to just add and take away some different cards from each of the different main decks that I've got. And so my current as of today has been the Shadowfen deck. So it seems to be going pretty well. I don't think I've lost a game yet with this one today, and I just hit the coin cap, so that must be a good sign. It has been, yeah, with Shadowfen mid range with Calaxy. And funny enough, I took since I made this deck, took out Toxac and I think it was Obsidian Butchers because I never saw any Shadowfen decks, and then put in Faithless Prophets and Claxy. So I think
Faithless Prophets?
Subaiku might be on the right path.
All right. Now you have me
Okay,
curious with Faithless.
yeah, so there's actually a reason I added that. I am sick of all the very strong winter cards, or just all the really beefy cards that they're playing. A lot of these winter decks are playing cards like Loris and Fluffy Bad Boxers and Twilight Prowlers. Each one of these things has like 10 plus strength by the time they're done with their attack and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
for 3 mana, I just get to eat up that entire thing and carry on about my day.
Oh, I like that.
Hmm.
So you have level 5 Faithless?
Of course.
Oh, okay,
Is there
okay, okay.
anything else?
Well, us plebs down with my level 4 Faithless. I did try it out relatively recently. Me and the Magi, we streamed a night where we were just trying to play Faithless decks. Actually, I think we had a deck with Faithless and a Copper Skin, and for reasons that I'm not quite sure I remember at this moment, we also had South Sea and First Mutineer in the deck. So, it was a hell of a deck. I think we were trying to do a séance with David G's old
His
3
very
mana and under.
first, yep.
Yeah. We were trying to kind of play in that vein, and we didn't lose. Faithless was nutty.
Nice. Yeah. No, it's a
It
good
is a good
card.
card.
It's hard
Level
to use,
four,
but it's a good card.
level 4 and level 5 are both very good when you're fighting against a lot of these opponents that have level 5 structures, for example,
Mm-hmm.
like True Shot.
Mm-hmm.
Level 4, beautiful.
Cleans it right up.
Yep.
So, Thomas, have you been putting any of the new cards into your Shadowfen deck or any of your decks?
I have. Let me take a look at my phone again real fast. And I've actually been using the new 2 mana a little bit more than the 1 mana. So I only capped out erratic and fragmented essences. And I'm seeing that I'm putting fragmented essences in more decks than I am erratic. But neither of them
Interesting.
have been making it into even probably 50% of the decks. But
Okay.
so fragmented, it's making it into more decks, honestly, because of that 7 strength gives it the ability to clean up a scrapped planners.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a
Isn't
nice
that so
answer. Yeah.
good?
It does feel very, very good.
Now, out of curiosity, we also, I mean, yes, we had the 4 ancients recently introduced. That's the Bounded Demons at 4, Lost Psyches at 3, Fragmented Essence at 2, and then the Erratic Neglects at 1. Also recently introduced was Sparkly Kitties at 2, which feels like perhaps the best 2-drop in the game right now. Are we seeing another situation where something like Fragmented Essences, which is potentially a really, really strong card, is just getting the wind knocked out of it, the wind taken out of its sails from another recent card introduction?
It's no fragmented. The fact that it doesn't have movement is the issue. Sparkly Kitties is absurdly good. It's for sure by far the best 2-drop. Close contender for best card in the game. Fragmented
Wow.
Essences.
Whoa!
Yeah, I
Coming in
mean,
with the hot take.
This is sizzling. Wait. So first off, we have to follow up with that. Wait, what is the best card in the game?
we've had a lot of discussions on Discord with different people before. I keep trying to ask people, and I think the general feeling for most people is
Tricking Alderman. Yeah, I know.
oh yeah, is Toad. I'm not 100% sure I agree with that, but that's continually like where people kind of lead to is
Toad the Elevated?
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean it's a good card. It's just generally useful. I don't
Sure.
know if I would say best in the game, but
Best in the game.
The issue
okay.
is that there's so many different like definitions and different parameters that you can put on that we could end up going down this path for the next 2 hours and probably not make much more
Oh yeah.
progress than where we're at
Yeah.
right now.
No. Okay, so Toad is the number 1 card in the game per Thomas, and you're saying
I'm not necessarily saying even that I'm thinking that Toad's the best.
okay, so Thomas knows a guy who says that
Yes,
it's the best.
that's a little bit
Okay,
better.
gotcha. So
This guy I met in the alley.
right. His cousin's friend who had a COVID shot, and that no, sorry, let's
My
cut that out of
father's
it.
brother's nephew's
Right.
former roommate.
What does that make us? Absolutely nothing. Um, okay, so Toad is the number 1 card in the game. Sparkly Kitties comes in at number 2. I'm interested. I like this. I'll sit and think about it and see if episode 44 I can't come back with some witty reason why that's not the case. But for right now, I'm going to say I hadn't really considered it, and let's take that as the top 2 ranking.
I will say I have not played around with the sparkly kitties on ladder because I haven't leveled it up yet. But using it in the lower level brawls, it
Mm,
feels real strong. It's
hmm
really good, and I can't wait for the next feline brawl.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's gonna be gross.
Mhm.
I would like to humbly submit one counterpoint, and that is if you know who Equinox is and you've taken a look at all at what Equinox has been doing, it is possible that Fragmented Essences is the most amazing card ever produced in this game by either Paladin or Sheepyard. I am pretty sure Equinox has literally broken the game with some of his experiments. These videos, by the way, I've lost probably 3 or 4 years of my life from not being able to breathe minutes on end laughing at the absolute absurd insanity of these Temple of Focus fragmented essence
If you're
boards.
not on the Discord, it's worth it to join just so that
Just
you
for
can watch
this.
these videos
Oh
where
my
it's like
God.
the fragmented essence is split and move and then split back and move, and it's nuts, and all of a sudden like the whole board is full of like 2 strength 1 strength tokens.
Or
It is,
worse.
yes, absolutely, totally worth it. You just need to have like 15 minutes for that single like
Yeah,
beginning of turn play to happen.
the animation takes forever. And heaven forbid if he puts Pog on it to begin with, because then everything on the board is just like insane. I don't understand. Like if Sheepyard has not reached out to Equinox at this point to ask, hey, we'd like you to do some playtesting of new cards for like marginal use cases that we haven't contemplated. They probably should. Although the counter argument to it is if people are going to start playing Klaxi, he makes an entire board of like 2 health fragmented essences, which would just be like Klaxi fodder like no one has ever seen. All right, so moving on from there though, you were saying about you about 40 to 50% of your decks you are trying out the 1 mana and 2 mana new ancients, Thomas.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yep.
let's get back to that because this is actually interesting. Um, we were thinking Erratic Neglects was going to supplant Summon Militia in basically all use cases aside from one where you specifically need random knights.
Well, or just both, if you need
Sure.
both of them. But I haven't found a single deck. I'm not playing any crazy rush decks. I tried that earlier this month, and as we know, with just how mid-rangey, just how heavy hitting high-end Heroes League is, you can't have 2 1-drops in your deck like this. Just you're going to get to late game and you're going to be putting out 5 power in a random spot on the board, and your opponent is going to be doing 10 power plus some other crazy thing. So, so you for sure can't have both when you're in like the upper leagues. And so I did 100% take out Summon Militia out of every deck and put Erratic Neglects in its place. I do have to say, I specifically did lose one game because of an erratic neglects.
No.
Yeah, my opponent's baseline was almost completely filled up, and it had gotten confusion, and went and wiped out
No.
the other card, and so I was like 1 point short of winning. So that felt bad.
Oh.
I hate that card. but but no, it's a good card. But again, it's just not having movement, and anymore most decks have things that have movement. And when you're not able to clear your opponent's front line, you start feeling really bad really quickly. And
Plus
that's
it
the
dies
reason
to
why
a
I was having issues with the fragmented essences as well. Even though it's got 7 strength, I like again like I think like when we had the last podcast, I was like, this is too strong. Now that I've actually been playing with it, the fact that it doesn't have movement is like, huh, they need to make Lawless Herd have 7 strength as well.
well, yeah. Um
No, I mean it's not even. They need to reduce fragmented down to 6. It's Lawless needs to go up to 7
okay.
because
Yeah, just
that's.
the lack of movement on the early game cards is just so impactful. Yeah,
Mhm,
the extra. As somebody who's played a significant amount of Lawless Herd, I can say it's fine. It'll do when you don't have anything else. But if you have anything else, Lawless is the first card that you cycle. It's just not quite strong enough, and the movement is just too important.
mhm.
Yeah, I guess I always go back to use cases like the one that Thomas mentioned earlier. Like now, if Lawless Herd was 7 health, I play it for 2 mana to counter your scrap planners. So my 2 clears. I mean, yeah, you already got probably a mana or 2 use out of the out of the
Well,
scrap
it's
planners
it's
anyway,
finally
right?
a fair trade because generally a scrapped planners is going to eat something like a gifted recruits.
Right.
So 8 2 mana, and now for the other 2 mana to allow this herd to clear out the scrapped is a 4 for 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Well, maybe something to think about. I don't know. I'm scared of fragmented essences only because of Equinox, and I just pray I never queue into him on ladder because I have no idea what's going to happen that game.
Yeah, so let's take a minute and talk. We talked about the meta already, but let's go through faction by faction and just kind of brainstorm how many viable decks, how many viable archetypes are there for each of these factions, at least, like top 100 Heroes League or so, right?
Okay.
That's, I think, an indicator of how healthy the meta is, right? Like we've been talking about winter, and winter doesn't really have anything that sees regular play outside of a heavy hitting gift and chillbeards deck. Whether you have Wolf in there or not depends on how slow you want it to be. Do you see anything else for winter, Thomas, that kind of strikes your fancy or puts some fear into you?
Absolutely. And so you were actually playing mostly the deck that I had either last month or 2 months ago with like an aggro-ish winter deck that just wanted to spit everything out into the board and generally using like Ubas as the clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing that, and that got me around to like 30th place. I do have to say that one of the only swaps that I did for that deck, well, summon Militia out and put in the essences. But then additionally, I guess I don't remember what else I took out, but Razor Sharp Lynx is in the deck now with the buff to it. This
Oh,
card feels
nice.
amazing. I think that
Instead of
they,
Mistwives?
yes, and it's beautiful. It works
Interesting.
so well. It was just like a no-brainer swap because what do you need that 11 strength for? If you are trying to smash something with it, then it's generally like a scrapped planners and perfect. It can take out scrapped planners. It can take out all the structures. So back when you were trying to figure out whether you needed Mistwives or like siege breakers, well, this can still take out those structures. But then finally, when you are just getting to that point where you just need to end the game and end the game right now, Razor Sharp still has that ability. And it does feel really good having two runners in the deck that you can run in for 11 damage on that moment dime where you have the opportunity to.
Oh, that's
Interesting.
great. Yeah, I like that. So you took out the blunt force instrument for something that's a little more flexible. I like that.
Yep.
Not
And
my style.
so
I'll stick with the hammer.
so this deck isn't going to get first place, but it is for sure top 50 competitive, and it's just a winter aggro deck with Shyvana and Ubas as the legendaries, and then just a bunch of the other lower mana cost cards to build up your base for Ubas pings and runners.
And you're running Hearthguards in your version?
I am not
Okay.
Siren.
Gotcha. All right. So yeah, so Subaiku and I were experimenting and with great success. I went undefeated through Diamond twice with that deck. Using the Hearth and Hearthguards as two of the cards in the deck.
Yep.
And the mana capped out at Hearthguards. So there was 1/5, that's Ubis, 1/6 at Hearthguards. Everything else 4 and under.
Yep, and I like the hearth guards in there personally, just because it's a little bit cheaper. It can be used flexibly. Sometimes that deck could fall behind to a more aggressive, like swarm rush, like a more aggressive swarm rush, for example. So just using the hearth guards to clear stuff off of your baseline was sometimes an option.
Yep, in Heroes Leagues, Siren was the concession against all these other fat winter decks that I just needed to clear out
Yep,
30, 40 power.
Well, so
makes
so
sense.
against Winter, by the way, I never trade with my Mistwives. I put 11 strength forward. I leave it to my opponent to figure out what to do with it. Too often I would trade with Mistwives, and then my opponent would respond with, "Oh, well, now that the Mistwives are so much less health, I'm going to Icicle Jev and then clear your board. When you can set it up so that you just throw the Mistwives on base is the best. But even if you can't, just throw them forward and leave them an 11 health. Now they've got a question of, well, do I Frost Hexers and Icicle Burst it and lose my Jev turn? Or, how do I deal with it? I don't like trading with Mistwives. I like just putting it forward and asking the question and demanding the answer.
Never trade. Defense is for suckers.
Defense is for suckers. Yes, I'm a pupil of the Subaiku school of Stormbound. Okay, so I guess the biggest question then, back to Subaiku's question about what archetypes are viable in each class, in each
Oh,
faction.
that's right. Yeah. So
Is is that an aggressive mid-range deck, or are we willing to call it a rush deck?
I've only got the 3 runners in the deck, so is that mid range or is that rush?
It's about as rushy as you can make winter, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's how I would say.
Reckless Rush's Swarm deck has goats and it has saber paws and it has no other runner. It only has 2 runners.
yeah, but Forgotten Souls turns your other 8 cards into
Mm-hmm.
runners.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
I get
So
it.
you have 12 runners in the deck.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But you see my point. Like,
Mhm.
rush is more a mentality. It's obviously a mana curve, and a mentality. If you are aggressive and you don't try to clog the board, you don't try to trade, you don't try to create value, you try to put pressure. And I think that deck is a rush deck because of that definition.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, I would say that rush and mid range and control are all viable for winter.
Certainly the control part of it.
Hmm.
I have not seen a lot of mid-range winter decks, but I think only because the aggressive rush and Chillbeard's control style decks are just so good. No
Well,
one's
I think
bothering
they
to play the
almost kind
middle.
of they skirt so close to the line of each other
Yeah.
that you don't really notice mid range because
Hmm.
it felt like they were either just crushing you the entire time, or it felt like or with like aggression, or they were just wiping out everything you had. You could have potentially just been playing a mid rangey deck, but that Gift of the Wise really throws off what you think your opponent is doing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
that I agree with. It really blurry lines there.
Hmm. So yeah, I would say pretty much everything is viable in winter right now,
All right, well, let's move from there to Shadowfen. I can speak to Shadowfen Rush. It works.
Yeah.
and so does control. So the whole 9 yards works for Shadowfen.
And
Always has.
I've been playing mid range. It's perfectly good.
S- So wait, what would we consider a Shadowfen control deck?
Go ahead,
Um.
Thomas.
Oh. Well, I guess I don't even know because they're just kind of gonna do what they do. They've got Loris and they've got Protach Sacrifice and Crimson Sentry. And I'd say witches can be used for everything.
Yeah, which is a generally useful card.
Hmm. I've only
Um,
seen Curse of Strings played one time this month,
Ooh, someone's
but
memeing with the new buff.
Oh yeah, I
mhm,
played against it. I definitely lost to that one too.
yep,
It was an unexpected curse of strings, for sure.
yeah. So I guess maybe not control. Maybe I'm just more thinking of the heavy mid-range hitters as what I was about to call control, and
Yeah,
that's obviously not
Claxy
correct.
can right. Claxy can be like a heavy hitter in a mid-range deck, or it can be a control card in a control card deck. In a control deck.
Yep.
But trying to put together like that's been I tried putting together like a Crimson Sentry, Trekking Alderman, Conflicted Drakes, Witches deck. Like I'm control. Toxac was in there. I'm controlling the board. Control deck, and it ended up using obviously what used to be the go-to for Shadowfen control. It used chestnuts as its sort of win condition, right? As I'm going to control the board, and while I do it, I'm going to slowly kill you. And it turns out that slowly is the operative word.
Yeah, you end up needing something like Klaxi or Bragda just to put a bunch of big units on the board so you can actually end the game sooner.
Right. Right. You have to put value on the board to put more pressure on your opponent, and you end up sort of sliding it back into a mid-range deck,
Hmm.
kind of out of necessity, because there's just not a lot of control options. Convert is definitely a control-ish thematic
Yeah, I would
thing.
say probably Convert is the one that comes to mind when I think of Shadowfen control, and it's pretty viable. Basically, instead of using Klaxi or Bragdic to create beefy units, you're just kind of taking your opponent's beefy units, and
Hmm. And yeah,
it.
you definitely have to be more controlly there to do that.
I
But
don't
yeah,
know if
so I
it's top
guess
100, but
yeah.
it's definitely viable. You'll win games, you'll have fun.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, but I think of the archetypes we've talked about so far, I would say that it's probably the weakest archetype.
Hmm. I would agree with that for sure. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, we'll say then that Shadowfen, aggro, and mid range are top 100 viable easily.
Easy, easy, easy,
easy.
easy.
I think Shadowfen mid range might be the best mid range, but I'll hold off judgment until we start talking
I
about Swarm in a minute.
think it always has been,
Yeah, I
and
was
that's
gonna
the reason
say,
why it won
have you
four
seen
straight
Rain?
seasons so far.
Have you seen Rain of Frogs? It's a card, man. All right, moving on from there, let's go to Ironclad. How's Ironclad looking?
Still fantastic.
Right. Scrap Planners hasn't been nerfed, right? No,
No,
still the same.
no,
Yeah, no, it's
still fine,
still a
man.
good faction.
Yup.
Yeah, I mean,
We can.
go ahead.
Oh, oh, I was just gonna say you could, but yeah, no, I'd say aggro is still crazy good. Well, that like
Hmm.
hyper aggro slash mid range that we've seen since the inception of Heroes League is still pretty much the same deck.
Yep,
Um,
exactly what I was gonna say. That Ironclad rush is still there. It's still strong. It's
It
maybe
hasn't been nerfed. It hasn't. Nothing's in it's changed.
it's
so
received.
many cards have been nerfed.
Yeah, month after month it was getting changes, and now it's just kind of down to a fair deck.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely
then
not as oppressive as it used to be.
yep. But yeah, so those two archetypes are viable. And then I would say like the deck that I used to get first place this last month could almost be considered control. Like it was still very like hyper aggressive, but the fact that it was using ozone purifiers and unhealthy hysteria to like control what my opponent was doing and win makers to control what they were doing could teeter a little bit on control.
Yeah, I think Windmakers is a controlling card, right? Like that's where you can make a chip deck that can be kind of like an aggro chip with Ozone Hysteria. But as soon as you start putting in cards like Windmakers, you're much more of a controlling style deck.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is funny because usually when we think about Ironclad control, you do think about those structures, the
Mia
Mia
Towers, yeah.
synergy,
Hmm.
get
Hmm.
land the true shot, use maybe like the newly buffed armed schemers to kind of derail your opponent. But yeah, you managed to do it through cheaper cards. By the way, I don't think we have actually officially acknowledged on the podcast, but congratulations on your number one finish last month.
Oh yeah, thank you. Well, technically, it's all thanks to Stony. I took his advice to heart. I mean, there's a reason I wanted him on,
There you
and
go.
so yeah, felt good to finally get it.
And while we're giving huge shout outs, just because you had just mentioned it, I wanted to give a shout out to MKM for putting together an Arm Schemers deck that won. And he ran it last week. It was a super entertaining stream that he put together with an Ironclad, like very, very heavy controlling deck. If you don't watch him, by the way, if you don't watch MKM streams, I don't know how to explain to you what you're missing, but it is hours of sheer madness and hilarity. So do yourself a favor and try to catch one of his streams one of these days.
So going back to Ironclad, we talked about how to play control with structures. Do you think it's particularly viable?
Um, so it's difficult to say that because I'm a really bad structures player, and so it's not viable for me.
I have the same problem. Like,
But I have played against some players that are very, very good at it, and the ones that come to mind are I don't even know, like Shite, Shte, whatever, like however we're supposed to pronounce his name. He's a crazy good one, and then also player 7565. I've got that one memorized because he is also crazy good at
yes.
playing structures. If you play him and you see that he's playing Ironclad, you know you're going to lose.
Yes, not a bot, and you're going to die to siege assembly every time.
100%.
Every time. What is with that? It's like a guarantee. I actually queued up in a mirror match against him playing Ironclad control towers. And yeah, it wasn't a game.
He's
It was
good.
it was it was 5 minutes of schooling.
So yeah, if you're really good at it, and I don't know what the secret sauce is, but Ironclad Structures is still very, very good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and siege breakers being not in the meta as much anymore, definitely helping that out too. I don't see it very often as a tech card for sure, which
No,
I
it shouldn't be.
appreciate. It
It-
should not be something you include by default. There are other options now. Now you just want to run it if you see a lot of structures, and honestly, you really don't anymore because you're mostly seeing Winter Swarm. I don't know, Thomas. You said you're seeing a bunch of Ironclad, but I can't say that my experience has been the same.
Most of the Ironclad right now has just been kind of the Hearth cards version.
Yeah, the aggro, the
Hmm.
rush.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's move on to Swarm then, our
Well, hold
final
on. We
faction. Oh,
skipped Ironclad mid range.
did we?
Yeah, don't really see it. Upgrade Point and Fort Tonic feel like they're too slow, not particularly viable. That's my take on it.
There's definitely an Ironclad Dragon deck that I've run into once or twice. That feels very mid-rangey. It's trying to build a big board of dragons. There's I have seen, although it's hard to tell exactly, again, because there's not that many cards in a deck to begin with. But when you see debug loggers, my gut is like, oh, okay, this is a mid-range deck. I suppose it's possible that people are slipping debug loggers into one of the rush variants just because maybe they don't have scrap planners at 5 or whatever it is. They're making like a card by card choice to swap it in just because they have it leveled up. But I would argue that anything that's running debug loggers tends to be more of a mid-rangey style deck.
Sure, or you put it in something where you don't have Loris leveled up, right? Or you don't
Oh,
want to
good
play
point.
it
Yeah.
as you don't want to play it as control-y, so you don't want Loris in there. You want to play it a little more mid-rangey, so you put in debug, which is perfectly fine. It's a fine
It's a good
card.
card. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a
It's
fine card.
pretty dang good, especially when your opponents start playing a lot of Shadowfen, because you can start eating up row upon row of Froggy token.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
So yeah, I would say that Ironclad, mid-range Ironclad, while the Fort Tonic nerf really kind of blew it off the planet, I actually think Fort Tonic is still a good card.
Yeah, it's all just kind of just a little bit too slow for the meta. That's my feeling. Having tried out a little bit of like upgrade point style decks,
Mhm.
I don't know if I could make it work.
Yeah, I would agree that but I think some of that just has to do with none of us are all that great at towers.
Well, yeah, I will
Um,
definitely admit that Ironclad is my worst faction. I'm not good at it.
I've got a booming professor's obviously tricking alderman deck that I put together today. I can't wait to stream it on my next stream because I'm going to become an Ironclad player or fail trying. Those are my only two options. Let's be honest. All right, now let's talk about Swarm. I hear tell that Swarm has this Bucks Zuri thing going on.
Worked
It
well for
has
me
for a
last
few
season.
months,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so that sounds kind of mid-rangey-ish.
Yep.
It is
And
absolutely a mid-range deck. Yep.
it does what it does. It does it well. Bucks is just stupid good. Suri moves across the board in a ridiculous fashion to give you outs at the end of a game where you should lose. I'd really like to try it with fragmented essences, but I
Mm.
haven't gotten that yet. So maybe next month I'll get the card and level it up, and then just start making tokens all over and buffing them with Suri and letting them kind of propagate
So
across the board.
this is a question I think that a lot of players out there would probably have because it's a question that I have when I try building one of these decks. Do I want Dark Harvest or not in this deck?
It depends on the meta.
Oh, okay.
My input is that Dark Harvest is not as good. That's personal preference, admittedly.
Mm-hmm.
I like to build the deck a little bit leaner. I ended up putting in Westwind just for something cheap that moves. This was pre-Sparkly Kitties. I might just
Ooh.
put the sparkles in instead of Westwind, right? Same strength,
Mm-hmm.
one less mana, just a straight upgrade, really. Yeah, I think how how much you want Dark Harvest often relies on how defensive you can make your early game.
Well, so like this deck that Ultrasonic has in first place is essentially the same exact shell as like your generic Zuri Harvest deck, and the only difference is when you're playing or when there's a lot of Swarm and Shadowfen in the meta, then you want Dark Harvest in, and you don't care about Bucks as much. And then
Okay.
when there's
Okay.
a lot of Ironclad and Winter in the meta, then you need to take out Dark Harvest and put in Bucks. Because think about the things that you're fighting against. Those
Yep.
two, Ironclad and Winter, have thick units, only a few on the board, but they're huge. And so Dark Harvest doesn't get a whole lot of value, but Bucks gets insane value. And then on the flip side,
Yeah, that's a
you've
really great way to look at it. Yep. Teching for the opponents that you're seeing. And with the prevalence of winter right now, definitely Bucks has been very useful for me last month. I'm sure it would be continue to be the best choice this month.
Wow. So I learned something new tonight, guys. All right. Well, so that takes care of mid range, which I think is sort of when you currently think of Swarm, that's sort of top of mind, right? And Zuri, that buff has done a lot to revitalize that archetype. Um, there is still Swarm Rush out there, is there not?
There
is
is.
there?
I definitely run into it.
Yes, I
I
definitely run into it.
I gotta say it feels less powerful than ever, even with
Mm-hmm.
the new cards. It's just kind of not quite enough. I will say most of the Swarm Rush I run into tends to be lower base health players too, so it definitely feels like the this is the deck I have leveled up, so I'm going to play it, and they can't incorporate the new cards. So maybe it would be stronger if you could fit in those Sparkly
Well,
Kitties
hold
and
on a minute,
Fragmented
because
Essences.
you've literally just sort of proved the counterpoint. If you have a small library and you are and you have a low base health, you haven't been playing in platinum this month, have you?
Oh, look, it definitely allows you to punch up. I agree
Yeah,
with that, right? You can win in Diamond, you can win in the Heroes League.
absolutely.
I don't think it's say like top 100 Heroes League. I think it's going to be very hard to make that happen with like a straight Swarm Rush, an old school Reckless Rush kind of deck. But
Okay, okay.
it'll definitely still win games. I'm not saying that it won't, especially with a lot of winter out there. You can just get there first and get there faster.
Yeah, that was my thought. Was anytime I see winter start to eat up more of the meta, it's reckless rush time.
And admittedly, my bias, I've been playing a lot of Shadowfen, which handles that sort of Swarm Rush pretty well most of the time.
Yep. Nope. All right. Well, then this brings us to the unicorn, the, the rare breed that we've heard tell of and yet never seen in the wild. Folks, is there a swarm control deck out there?
There is one that a player was playing 2 or 3 months ago, and he was actually top 20, but it disappeared again.
You're talking about Mateus with his Pillars of
Yes,
Doom, man.
Yes.
the man.
I that, I got destroyed by him so
Every
many
single game.
times.
Was
I
that
don't understand it.
the Aaron Needle Blast Blade
Yup,
Storm? Yeah.
yup.
Oh, that was good.
That was a sweet deck. And yes, he was top 20 for like 2 months in a row with that exact deck.
Mm.
And
Yeah, and I don't understand how. Like
I don't either.
if I put that combination of cards in a deck, I would lose every game.
That's exactly what I did because I was like, all right, he's got something going for him. There's something here. I
Yeah,
tried it.
you're right. Yeah, you're like he's on to something new here. I can make that work. No, you can't.
Nope. It's those structures. We were just talking about it. It was that dang structure.
Right?
Yeah, there is something about Pillars of Doom that just it almost seems like seppuku when I use it. Like I'm literally playing it as instead of conceding. Just like, you know what, I could concede, but I want to let you play a few more cards before I die. So here, I'm just gonna do this instead.
I could
Um,
concede, but I have this play four structures quest.
so
For
let me
me,
get.
oh,
Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say that, like, for me, it was like whenever I would like play that, it really, like, back when I first like started playing this game, I was like, my opponent is definitely cheating. He's got the cheat codes to add the 13th card to his deck, and he just added Siege Breakers, and he just played it on me. Like, that is how he was able to get Siege Breakers suddenly. Every single
Mm-hmm.
time I play that card, it's like Temple comes out, nope, Siege Breakers.
Well, we just talked about how we're not seeing siege breakers as much anymore. Maybe
Ooh,
this is your time to shine.
there we go.
Yeah, there was I can't remember who it was. Like one of my first sort of eye-opening matches where you realize what a tempo loss playing towers can be. I went up against one of the top 10 player. I'm not going to be able to remember who it was right now. And his mana turn 5 was Frozen Core, and my mana turn 6 was Saber Paws into a direct attack by Siege Breakers, and that was the game. As good a player as he was, the oh, I'm sorry, I have the exact counter in hand, and you'll never get any value out of your mana turn 5 play was just, it's crippling. And that's always my fear with playing towers is I put myself behind the 8 ball so badly. Like Subaiku and I were trying to play the other night. And he was trying to coach me through playing towers. And I have this fear, even though it's true shot that we were playing, that if I put it on an inner row, my opponent is going to just tuck something in the corner that I can't remove. That true shot is gonna, like, shoot the wrong way. It'll shoot the other side and kill something over there. And so this unit that I can't clear is going to be tucked in to the corner next to the true shot. And it's just going to perpetually be that kind of event every turn until I die. Like putting it in a middle row right now is just conceding the game kind of an attitude. And he's like, no, you got to put it there. It's the only place where it's protected. You got to do it. You got to do it. I'm like, I can't. I don't get towers yet. I'm going to probably lose another 20 or 30 games with a tower controlling deck before I figure out how to make this work. And so hats off to people like Mateus who've got and shitty, however we pronounce it. Those guys have it figured out, man, and it is not straightforward.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's definitely a different way to play the game.
Speaking of shite, Subaiku says he just lost audio.
Oh, rough.
Yeah, that is rough for him. Anyway, that means the adults are out of the room. Thomas, it's you and me. Let's
Heck
do it.
yeah.
Whoa! Try to close out. We're an hour. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll try to close out, Subaiku. Sure thing. Whatever.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no, he can't even control what we're doing anymore.
that's right. He can't. It's all us.
All right,
I
time
don't know what to
to
say though. All
gotta
right.
give his deck list.
That's right. For all of you playing against him, watch out. No, we'll move on from that. I guess we'll move to feedback. All right. Well, that's going to end the main portion of this episode, which means it's time for me to remind you to contact us, preferably in our channel on the Stormbound Discord server, on Twitter at Brewed Sages, and you can email us at thebrewedsages@gmail.com. We also have an additional way for you to reach out and support us. We have a Gumroad account where you can become patrons of our work. Check out the link on our Stormbound Kitty page, or don't. That's what everybody else does. This week, we hear from Hubermensch, who says, man, this intro feels warm, for lack of a better word. It feels exactly like friends talking about something they enjoy. Congrats for the 1 year. By the way, it was us just talking about something we enjoy. We love this game. I enjoy this podcast a lot. Well, thank you so much. Cheers to Arthas, who went along for a long stretch of this adventure, and Thomas, who's now there too. A little correction. Swarm has one of the best 4 mana drops. That is Devastators. The whole Reckless Rush deck revolves around that card. I'd argue that's a pretty solid card, but of course, Mischief sucks. Yeah, I'll give you that. Devastators is a good card in the right deck. Uh, uh,
It's just a
Alden the
little
20.
bit too fragile is the issue.
Yeah, well, it's just not like, so when I think of good like 4 drops in the game, right? Mistwives is playable in every. You can play it in a rush deck, a mid range deck. You can play it in a control deck. Toad and Witches, yes, right? Scrap Planners, you can play it in every. In fact, you should play it in every Ironclad deck you have. But there's no contract. I don't care. They just put it in the deck. That's not true for the 4 drops in Swarm. Swarm has a bad one, and it has a card that is very, very good in the right deck.
Yes, exactly.
Moving on from there, Alden the 23rd says, now that's a title. Well, we have a Douglas Adams fan. I'm glad to hear that. That is my personal Bible, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Moving on, Cow says, the description of the video has a mistake. Nerfs. That was probably my typo. I apologize. I'll look into it and see if I can get it fixed.
We wrote births, and that is an old callback at this point.
Oh! So the mistake was not nerfs. It was that I wrote births. Yes. No, we mean when a card gets changed in a way that might be considered a buff, might be considered a nerf. For example, we give it more strength, but we also up the mana. Is that a nerf? Is it a buff? And we argue it's neither. It's both. It's a birth. And that's going to do it for this episode. For Subaiku and Thomas, I am Freeloader. We are the Brewed Sages, reminding you to stay hydrated.